But as we turn to tonight's program, I want to give you a little background. The idea for this came from one of our trustees, Glenda Schwartz, who mentioned to Elliot Werner, who, along with Bob Schock, is the co-host of are the co-chairs of our program committee. And Elliot, she said, there's a rumor. She said, I can't confirm it, but there's a rumor that the portrait painter Ammi Phillips once lived in the little house that's next to the Bean store in Clinton Corners. Now there's a little salt box style house painted sort of a dark green, I think it is there. And that's pretty intriguing. And we looked briefly, Ellie began, looking into it and discovered that Ammi Phillips, and you'll hear this from Mr. Lynch, lived all over the place during the 19th century. Almost, every 10-year census, he was in another community, all within our general neighborhood. So that's fascinating. So we're grateful to Glenda for the suggestion, to Elliot for following up on it, and then to Bob Schock, who is handling our technology this evening. And we're grateful to him for the learning curve. He's taking over from Kathy McMahon, who has been doing this job for us for many years. So it's nice to give her a little bit of a break, but we're grateful to Kathy. And we're also grateful to Kathy, who handles our website and the publicity for this. So all of these programs, it's not quite the long list of credits you see at the end of a news hour or something, but it takes a lot of people to put even a simple little program like this together. So we're grateful to all of them. And now a little bit about Steve Lynch. He has been active with the Fishkill Historical Society, which has its headquarters in the Wyck Homestead, which of course has Revolutionary War associations. And he's been a tour guide there since 2008, but has been their president for 13 years until 2023. His talk will focus on the 5 paintings they have at the Wyck Homestead, but he's also going to talk about the broad sweep of Ammi Phillips's career. He painted for more than 50 years, producing perhaps as many as 2,000 portraits in so many disparate styles that his works were once thought to be by several different artists. Currently, over 800 paintings are attributed to Ammi Phillips, although only 11 of them are signed. His paintings are on display at many museums, such as the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the American Folk Art Museum in New York, the Williams Archives Museum, the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, Philadelphia Museum of Art, the National Gallery of Art in Washington, Sharon Historical Society, Dutchess County Historical Society, and, as you know, the Wyck Homestead Fishkill Historical Society here in Dutchess County. So without further delay, I'm delighted to introduce Steve Lynch and his slideshow, which I'm really looking forward to. So
okay. I expect it to take about 40 minutes or so. I apologize that I wrote copied text from a book about Ammi Phillips, and I made them like 4 inches by 6 inches, but with this slideshow, they're going to hit you in the face. They're going to be full 10 inches. And I could not seem to get the text of things that should be small to be small. So I apologize for the large text at times. Looking at the dates of Ammi Phillips, he was born right before George Washington became our first president, and he lived through the Civil War and witnessed that Abraham Lincoln had been assassinated. So a long life historically. So let me just go this. I put this up as the main photo here because I love the transparency of the woman's bonnet, the ribbons coming down. It's like, how can you paint something that's transparent? But he did that a lot. So, all right. So he was an itinerant painter. 1820, the census shows he was at Troy, New York. Oh, see, the text is missing on the far right there. Unless can that be fixed, Bob?
Not sure.
Okay. In 1820, he was in Troy, New York. 1830, Rhinebeck, New York. He had 45 acres of property. 1840, he was in Armenia. And maybe, as you said, maybe he was in Clinton or Clinton Corners in between the census, all right? So we don't really know, but he very well could have been somewhere for 2 or 3 years and then moved on in between censuses. In 1850, he was in the town of Northeast, and his profession was listed as portrait painter. 1855, he was listed as artist, and he was in the New Marlborough, Massachusetts area. And 1860, he was in Curtisville, which is now Interlaken, near Stockbridge, Massachusetts. And on here it says for the past 10 years, this book was written in 1968. So the past 10 years was late 50s, early 60s. And he died in July 1865 and is buried in Amenia Island Cemetery near his 5-year-old daughter, Sarah, who died of the croup on April 5th, 1845 in Matawan at Fishkill Landing. I surmise she was accompanying him while he was making his rounds in Fishkill to do portrait paintings in 1845. And she was buried in Armenia. And now a word from our sponsor. This is the Van Wyck Homestead Museum in 1962. It was going to be demolished for Interstate 84. About a dozen local people formed the Fishkill Historical Society. And in 1963, Willa Skinner, who just died recently in January, she went up to Albany and met with the Department of Transportation head and told them about the importance of it, that Washington, Lafayette, Alexander Hamilton, John Jay, Baron von Steuben, other heroes of the American Revolution were here, and this house needed to be preserved, even though it was really just an old abandoned farmhouse. And as you can see here, the wall was falling apart, but I like this photo because it shows 2 fireplaces on the first floor. There was actually 4 fireplaces in the house, but only 3 chimneys coming up at the top of the roof. And as you can see, in 1757, when they were building the addition, each brick was overlaid by 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch. So the 2 fireplaces go up and come out the 1 chimney. And it was abandoned in 1958 and could not be sold for 12 years, 1958 to 1970. And in 1970, the Snook family donated it to the Fishkill Historical Society, and it became our headquarters. And the members at that time, maybe 50 members or so, banded together and working weekends on their own. They repaired it. The roof needed to be replaced. Lots of repairs needed to be done, and they saved the homestead. And I believe 1974 was the first year that they opened as a historic museum. So technically this year is our 50th anniversary year as a museum. And this is Willa Skinner showing July 4th, 2013. We had the Van Wyck family members at the museum. And this is young Joey Cavassini. And Willa was showing him, training him to be a tour guide. And I paraphrased John Kennedy's inaugural speech at the bottom with the torch being passed to a new tour guide. And Joey Cavassini is now the town supervisor for the town of Wappinger. I think he's 24 now. And we've been using the homestead for the years as Revolutionary War weekends, and we've been making use of it, and we're very thankful that a dozen members formed the Fishkill Historical Society and saved it 60 years ago. Right. Ammi Phillips publicized his talent for painting correct likenesses, distinguished by perfect shadows and patrons eloquently dressed in the prevailing fashions of the day. And this is Mrs. Mayor and daughter, Metropolitan Museum of Art. And this is the one I was using with the transparency of the ribbons there. And next one is Mrs. Bentley Northrop and her daughter. And her daughter looks to be about 7 years old, so I figure it was painted in 1820. And on the internet, I saw that it said lot 877 Sotheby's auction, and it said auction is closed. So I don't know when it was. But this is her and her daughter, 1820. So these are the early styles of Ammi Phillips in the 18 teens, the 1820s. And Young Boy, I don't know what the year is. It's in a private collection. But I read somewhere, and it might be in a text that I show, that boys and girls wore dresses. And I remember seeing something at the Franklin Roosevelt Museum. He was born in 1882, and I recall seeing a photo of him when he was about 3, and he was in a dress. So I don't know what the purpose of it was, unless maybe it was for potty training or something for 2- and 3-year-olds or something. I'm not sure. And again, this is probably one of the earlier ones. This is kind of a stiff, stick-looking figure. So I think this is his early years, probably in the 18 teens. And I don't know how you get a young girl like this and the dog to pose for you for an hour or so while you're painting. But the next 3 paintings are Wilbur Sherman, his wife, Mrs. Wilbur Sherman, and daughter Sarah, and then Grandpa, Caleb Sherman. So this is 1815, and he's doing pretty good, I guess, at a young age. He's in his 20s at this point in time. And I understand, I read that he charged $10 a portrait. Now, he would go to a family like this, and he would charge $10 a portrait, and so he would make $30. And it was all profit, basically, because when he went places, he couldn't stay at a hotel. A hotel could be 10 miles away. It would take 3 hours to get there. So while he was painting them, and I'm thinking it might take like 2 days to do him and 3 days to do them and 2 days to do Grandpa. So he's there for a week. They're feeding him breakfast, lunch, and supper. So it's all profit. He made $30. And you think about it, in 1815 or so, from what I've read, the average person was making what, $100 a year, $200 a year? And he just made $30 for 1 week's work. So he was doing pretty good, even at an early age. All right, the strain is on the reverse of his portraits. Most painters use stretches, and this may be one of the primary ways that the art historians were able to identify his portraits over the years. In addition to the style, but as it says somewhere along the line, that initially they thought there were several different artists, and in the 1950s, 1960s, they realized, no, this is just one artist, all these different paintings. Oh, here's the part about the stretches. So for some reason, he used these strainers for his portraits, and others used the stretches mostly. So that was a good way of identifying his portraits. Now here I just listed photos from a book. They're all black and white. Obviously the photos are color photos, but they're black and white in the book. But all of the women, if you notice, are facing to their right. Next one. All right. And the men generally are facing to the left, with some exceptions here. But the purpose of that is, if he's doing a husband and wife, the man would be looking to his left, and the wife would be looking to her right, and they'd be it could be shown on a wall looking towards each other instead of away from each other. All right, this was back in December of 2022. My wife Alexis and I were at Colonial Williamsburg for 3 days, And the third day it was raining out, raining steadily in a cold rain. So we decided to go to the Williamsburg Artifacts and Art Museum. I'm not sure exactly what it's called, but we went inside, and while going around, we came across these photos of Ammi Phillips and um, details of his work. And then I included a write-up in our February newsletter about Ammi Phillips. And to be honest, yeah, why aren't they smiling? A lot of them look grumpy, like this one woman in this picture with the green shawl. It seems to me that they could be smiling a little bit. I realize you can't hold a expression of smiling for a long time, because you got to pose for the painter for like an hour and then maybe take a half an hour break and then pose again for an hour and take a half an hour break. So it's time consuming. And this is a close up. This is a better photo of the woman that was in the picture there. And then we have, I don't know what this, poly, but I can't pronounce the name. All right. Anyway, this is the border period. His border between Massachusetts and New York is what he calls the border period. And this is her again. This is 1815, so early works of Ammi Phillips. 1816, yeah, a lot of color here. This is Joseph Slade, and then his wife, also Slade, and lots of use of colors on these portraits. Again, this is his early, he started in about 1810, 1811, so he's doing pretty good. And as you can see, whoops, as you can see, they're facing each other. So he'll be on the right, looking towards her. She'll be on the left, looking towards him. And the Strawberry Girl, 1830. You got the colors. Young girls in dresses seem to be the thing for 1829, 1830. And when I could identify where it is, like here, I put Metropolitan Museum of Art, New York City. Oh, all right, I meant to go back here. You have the footstool here and the green and red carpet. You see the footstool? I'm looking at the tassels. They're very difficult, I think, to paint the tassels. And then here you have another footstool, and maybe it's the same one, but this one he painted red instead of green, and you got the tassels showing also. Someone just said that one of his paintings is 8 feet, so I'm not sure. This is Mrs. Stephen Ostrander's one of the largest known canvases that they had made. And this looks to me like the same carpet that was in the previous picture. But anyway, he started incorporating dogs into the photos. I'm not sure what date this is. And as the text said, there's John Leicester and dog from 1838, and he was from LaGrangeville, while Mrs. Stephen Ostrander was from Saugerties. And I was somewhere, it says, I was interested. The dog represents fidelity of character, and strawberries symbolize youthful vitality. I never knew there was symbolism in the paintings. I thought it was just a dog. Now here's Girl in a Red Dress from 1835. And again, you got the stool. It's the green stool with the tassels, and the carpet looks similar to what it was. So I'm not sure. I guess he's either painting them all in a studio in the winter, as I'll come up to, or he was just bringing a stool along with him to have as a prop for young children to sit on. And again, got the dog here. Dog looks like it got punished or something. I'm not sure. Kind of cute though. All right, next one's girl in a red dress with a cat and dog. And this was sold for $1 million. Now I should add that an art critic said some of Ammi Phillips' paintings have sold for six figures, so over $100,000. And he said, but many I would value at just $2,000 to $4,000. Well, darn it, wouldn't you know it? Our 5 Ammi Phillips paintings at the Van Wyck Homestead are worth about $4,000 or $5,000. We got the cheap ones. We don't have the really expensive ones. So, and here's the girl in a red dress, sold for $1 million. I'm not sure when, but it's at the American Folk Art Museum in Manhattan, which I believe is at 66th Street and Columbus Avenue, which is about 1 block west of Central Park. And I plan on going down there this April or May and checking out their artwork, especially the Ammi Phillips paintings. I'm sure they have more than just this one. All right, this heading was on the wall in the Williamsburg, Virginia Museum. And yes, they did. In 1843, 1845, Ammi Phillips was in the Fishkill area. This mentions 6 photos. One was Harriet Simmons Hasbrook, but we don't have her painting. But we do have the Bogatis paintings, husband and wife, and 3 members of the Fishkill Phillips family, which they say is not related to Ammi Phillips. And while I'm thinking about it, there are no known paintings of Ammi Phillips or his family that I know of. I read he painted cousins. At one point it said he painted a family of 5 or 6 cousins and their children in return for a horse. So he didn't get paid for the paintings, but they gave him a horse as payment for the paintings. And anyway, as you can see here, we have Joseph Bogatis and his wife Barbara Bogatis. In Fishkill, there's a Bogatis Street, and for years there was a Bogatis General Store on Main Street, I think up until either the late 1990s or the early 2000s. And then we have Elias Phillips. Oh, and I just want to say, go back. You can see the red velvet chair here, all right? Each of these paintings is a red velvet chair, his wife and son. And so it's like, okay. And when I became a tour guide, the brochure that they gave me to learn to be a tour guide, it said Ammi Phillips painted all the bodies without the head and without the hands. And when he came to people's houses, that's when he inserted the heads and the hands, which kind of makes sense. And I surmise that he would paint men like a medium and then a large, and a woman would be petite, and then petite and large, I guess. And if there was someone who was extra large, it would be fairly easy to just paint the body wider. Right, you get the sun here. And now I just want to show some details on them. So this is Joseph Bogatis. Oh, and here's, like I said, this should be just a 4 by 6 inch thing. This is the sign on the painting. So they're all made by Ammi Phillips in 1843. And this is a close-up of his face. And then you got this bank, and in the notes it had said that this, I don't know, anti-bank Democrat newspaper was only published in 1843. So that ties it down that, yes, this was painted in 1843. And then you have Barbara Bogatis, and painted by Ammi Phillips, donated by Jesse Conklin. And you can see here, you got the green ribbons, colorful, and you've got the shawl. There's transparency to it. And the detail of the painting, it's like, wow, this is a good painting, I think, good artist. And now we have Elias Phillips, no relation to Ammi Phillips. He has a Bible, and I did not realize this. I've been showing people these Ammi Phillips paintings for 15 years now. Now, just so you know, we give tours. They're about 45 minutes long. When I'm in the one room, I just show them the two Bogartis family portraits and say that they were local residents in Fishkill. And then when we come into the hallway, you got Eliza Phillips, his wife and son. And I just point out the paintings, and I do point out that he was a minister and had a Bible in his hand, but I didn't realize that his wife and son also had this Bible in their hands. And again, it's titled, now this is donated by Grace Phillips Com. So she's a Phillips family descendant who donated these paintings. So this is detail, and you got the hair. You can see like every strand of hair in his head. And here he's has his hand on the Bible. And his wife, Elizabeth, she's holding the Bible also. And sorry, this is out of focus, but again, donated by Grace Phillips. And the bonnet and shawl, detail, good painting. And you got the details of her holding it, and it does look like writing. I mean, I'm thinking of how long it would take to write in all these little things to make it look like text in a book, in a Bible. And this is even closer. It really isn't words or anything, but made to look like words. And then you got their son, Joseph Phillips, who was, I believe, 8 years old. So yeah, this is 1843. So he's 8 years old in this painting. And again, he's holding the Bible and turning pages. And they added the heads later, didn't they? No. What I'm finding out is they basically did the heads first. So I've been telling people for 15 years, or up until December of 2022, that they painted the bodies in the wintertime and then took the bodies and painted the heads and hands on the paintings in the summertime when they got to people's houses. And that's not true. Based on this year from the book, these are texts from the book that I was reading, and the book is actually in the Van Wyck Homestead Museum's library. And I guess probably because we had the paintings donated to us back in the 1970s. And this was from Williamsburg. This is when I learned in December of 2022 that no, putting the heads on the paintings last is a myth, a long-standing myth. But again, I'm coming back to those paintings that had the little stool that the kids were sitting on. I guess, did he bring that with him? He must have brought things to paint. And the chair, since the red velvet chair is with two different families, did he have that with him? He brought it in his wagon. I guess when he traveled, it had to be a covered wagon to cover the paintings and stuff due to rain, or the blank canvases and stuff due to rain. So he must have had a covered wagon when he traveled around. And this, as I said, we don't, as someone had asked before the program started, a lot of them say man with newspaper. I have no idea who he is or where it was made. And this is man holding the Telegraph paper. The name of the paper is the Telegraph. But look at the writing on that. Look at the detail on the writing. It looks like you could actually read it if it was full size, a full size painting. And actually, all of these are portrait of a man holding Telegraph paper. Portrait of. Okay, I just left the first two words out on all these. And we have Deacon John Gurney and his wife Mercy. And again, you know, I can see, can't smile much, but gee, a lot of these people are frowning. Look at her frown. She doesn't look happy, as far as I'm concerned. Oh, and I want to go back now. Our Phillips family, the three people in the Phillips family had Bibles. He is a man with a large Bible and his wife with a small Bible. And going through the paintings, I see all these women holding a Bible, small Bible. Maria Cooper, private collection in the Bible. This the title is Woman Holding a Bible. Miss Ellen, holding a Bible. And again, I like the headpieces that these women are wearing. It's like, wow, and look at the lace on the hand. It's transparent. So it's like, how could he paint these things transparent? And another woman with a Bible, lady from Dover Plains. The Bible again. And this one is Portrait of a Woman with Bible and Glasses. So there's the Bible under her elbow and glasses in the hand. And that reminded me that in the Wyck Homestead Museum, we have a woman with a Bible and glasses. This is not an Ammi Phillips painting, though, okay? But apparently, a lot of portrait artists had people with Bibles. Now, you can't see the glasses here, but with this close-up, you can see she has the glasses on top of her head. And this was donated to us in 2013 from the Brinkerhoff family. The Brinkerhoff family, the inn, right now it's a Brinkerhoff Inn at Route 52 and 82. So a member of the Brinkerhoff family, after Beverly and Todd died in 2011, 2012, they donated this portrait to us. And with the portrait comes the glasses and the Bible, which is like, wow, this is neat. So this is from 1843. And the glasses that she's wearing on her head here and the Bible in her hand here came with the portrait, which is kind of neat. And this is the couple donated by Patty and John Brinkerhoff Hazlitt, donated in memory of his mother, Harriet Brinkerhoff Hazlitt. Now this is a portrait. What I'm going to show you is a photo of a portrait of Cornelius C. Van Wyck, painted by Ammi Phillips in, I guess, the 1820s or 1830. He died in 1832. And so this is a photo which is framed, and the real portrait is owned by a Van Wyck family, or a woman. I think she's in her 80s, and she has bequeathed it to our Fishkill Historical Society upon her death. Because I presume that she has, I don't know the details of it, but I presume she has no more family members. And so we will be getting the actual Ammi Phillips portrait of Cornelius C. Van Wyck, painted, like I said, 1820s or 1830. And that will be the 6th Ammi Phillips painting in our collection. And here, this is from the book I had, and it had 1860 to 1868. And since he died in 1865, I changed the 8 to a 5. But upon reading it later, I found out it was 1868 because that's when his final will was solved, and he gave everything to his wife and family. And anyway, even at the end, he was making $10 a painting and $25 for a canvas with 3 people in it. And he was painting up until, I think, 1864 anyway, maybe not 1865, but he was doing well. And as I said, he was, even in the 1820s, he was doing fairly well, making $10 a portrait. And so you go to a family with 3 or 4 people, and you make $30 or $40 for, I'll say, a week's painting, maybe longer than that. It's like, wow, like I said, there's over 1,000 photos of his out there. There's my mouse there. Anyway, any questions?
Excellent. So well, first of all, thank you very much. That was incredibly interesting. I really had no idea he was so concentrated in our immediate area right here. So he's very well known, and I'm glad you're able to bring that to life for us. I wonder if anybody has any questions. Are there any questions on the chat?
Cynthia, I have.
Okay.
Hello.
Hello, Elliot.
Nope.
Go ahead.
Okay, yeah. Why would some painters do stretching and others do straining? Is there a difference? Is one better than the other? Easier than the other?
The stretching, I think, there was a screw or something that you could tighten to tighten the canvas. And I'm not sure what the straining, Ammi Phillips used straining method. As I said, he had to use dowels and screws in the corners. And I'm not sure what it is, but apparently when they started getting together and finding all these paintings of his or similar paintings, it was the backs of them that made them say, oh, this is Ammi Phillips. This is Ammi Phillips. As they said initially in the 1920, I think it was the 1924 group got together and they had all these paintings and they thought it was several different artists because he changed every 10 years. He was changing his style apparently. And so I think from what I've read, the backs of the paintings, and maybe he was the only one using strainers. I don't know.
Is there any advantage to doing using one?
I'm not an artist, so I have no clue. You'll have to look it up or something.
All
If
right.
you want more information, I guess look up Ammi Phillips on the internet.
Okay. All right.
I was looking for photos, and there's lots of photos that, the girl in the red dress with cat and dog worth $1 million. You can take a picture off the internet and maybe make a 16 by 20 and frame it for yourself for about $100. You don't have to pay $1 million for it.
Well, that's good to know.
There are a couple of questions in the chat. Let me read the first one from
Okay.
Betsy
All right.
Strauss.
Okay.
Did you find the other portraits online, like Deacon John Garnsey?
Yeah, I think what most of the pictures that I had were from the internet. Searched around, and I would go to like the National Gallery of Art, Washington D.C., or Metropolitan Museum of Art, American Folk Art Museum, Sharon Historical Society. But what I was finding is that basically each of these sites has a picture of a girl in a red dress with a cat and dog. And I know just the one museum have it. So out on the internet, a lot of the places are displaying, I guess, samples of his work, but it's not necessarily at their museum. Okay. So you'll see the same picture posted on lots of different websites out there.
I just wanted to say that Guernseys were from Armenia, and they were close friends with Ammi Phillips, and that Ammi Phillips stayed in our neighborhood. Our house was built by Deacon John Guernsey. So
Okay.
we can add that little factoid.
Okay.
Interesting.
And like I said, we just know where he stayed from the censuses. So we, in the years between 1833 and 1838, he might have been in Clinton Corners, somewhere around there. So we don't know. And I don't know why there's no paintings of it. If I was a painter, I would, and especially making 1,000 paintings, I would have somebody paint me. If I couldn't do a self-portrait, I would have somebody paint me and I would paint him. And then you have it. And also his family, his wife, his daughters. I know it said that he did cousins and other distant family relatives, but apparently not his own family. Or no, it can't be. Oh yeah, maybe the girl in the red dress is one of his daughters. He's married twice, by the way. He's married once and he had some young kids and she died. I forget what the year was now. And she died, and then he got married about a year, not even a year later, about 6 months later, to a young lady. I'm trying to think, I think he was about 40 and she was in her 20s.
Yeah, there's quite a difference. Ann Calkins.
And what I was reading was that suddenly his paintings came to life. I guess from being married to a young woman, his paintings really, his whole thing changed. They were more, I don't know what, more loving, if you will. All right. So,
Yeah, warm.
yeah.
Yeah.
There's another question in the chat, which is there an image of the back of his painting?
I read somewhere that on one of them there was a head, so he must have sketched somebody's head, and it didn't come out too good. And so he turned the canvas around and painted on the other side of it. And it was just a sketch, not a painting, but it was a sketch of someone said that he started drawing. And again, I emphasize that what I found out in reading things is the head was the primary thing that they tried to make. All right, you had to get the head right. The family had to agree that yes, that's a good likeness of my husband or my wife or whatever. All right, and if you didn't get it right, you threw that canvas out, I guess, and got a fresh canvas and started over again. So the heads were the most important, and then they added on the clothing that they were wearing. And as I said, he advertised that I'll draw you a portrait in the latest styles, and that's why the women are all in these bonnets and hats and nice dresses and stuff. And I don't know, for some reason, a lot of little girls in a red dress. I'm not sure. This might be a red dress. Maybe it just looks orange in this, but it might be a red dress.
I think the question had to do with this, what did you call them, strainers? Are there any images of the back of the canvas that show us his unique technique of not using stretchers, but strainers?
Not that I know of. I wasn't looking for it, but again, search on the internet and look up Ammi Phillips' back of his paintings. There might be something out there.
Yeah.
I don't know. And I don't know what a stretcher is, other than I read somewhere where you could tighten it up by turning a screw or something to tighten up the canvas. And it seemed to me to be easier than this strainers that Ammi Phillips was using.
What is the largest painting that you know of?
Well, someone here before the meeting said there's a painting that they have or they've
Oh, no,
seen
no,
that's 8 feet
No,
high.
No. I wonder about the painting that we have here in Clinton that is not attributed to Ammi Phillips. It's a
Oh.
painting of Theodore Schultz, which is huge.
Okay.
And I'm going to look at the back. I have some photographs of the back of that painting from when it was restored. But I just wondered, are there any really huge portraits that you know of?
Well, the text said that the portrait of Mrs. Stephen Ostrander and son Titus from Sorgades was his largest canvas. And I don't know, it didn't say what size it was.
Oh.
I know our paintings in the Wyck Homestead Museum are basically, I think, 4 feet by 3 feet or 4 feet by 2.5 feet.
Mm-hmm.
So hers might have been a 6 feet tall.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, the book didn't give too much details. It also didn't give much details about his personal life, because it's an art book and it was just talking about his art and the way he painted. So you got to look elsewhere, I guess, for his personal life. It says that he's buried with his daughter in the Amminia Island Cemetery, and it doesn't say where his 2 wives are buried or other children. So I don't know.
I believe his wife is buried with him in that. It's in the Calkins family plot.
Yes, right, okay. Now, is that the in-laws? Is that the in-laws or something?
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed, and I don't know what proportion it's true, but this painting, for example, which has this exquisite detail from, let's say, around the shoulders up, it's interesting about the myth about the heads, because his paintings seem to go in 2 different directions. Either there's nobody, and I would call this one with nobody. In other words, he made sure the background was black, the dress is black, and it could define anybody's body. And I noticed that many of the paintings are like that. And then there's another set of paintings where he uses, for example, a brown background, and a dirt brown background. And then in those paintings, you can completely see the specificity of the body for the person. So to me, he seems to have two different directions. Maybe it's related to cost or time, but they're almost like two different artists, except when you observe the head part where it's so meticulous and wonderful and transparent. But are most of the paintings, as in not necessarily what you showed here, but in general, bodiless? Because I call this bodiless, really. Not the child, obviously.
I read in the book and on the internet a little bit. I guess he was getting so busy that he was trying to paint quickly, and by having black suits and ties for the men, for the men in the black, and women also dressed in black, like this woman, it was easier to paint them. And it's dark, so you don't see. I don't know if there's any buttons on it. So anyway, it was a matter of efficiency that he could do more paintings. Okay, more paintings and simple, and basically people were interested in what the faces were and the hands. I think he had trouble with hands. That was, I think, one of the problems, at least early on, what to do with the hands. But yeah, there was a period of, I don't know, about 10 years that he was mostly doing things in black, like our paintings at the Wyck Homestead Museum. They're all black, and
The one that
that's
sold
why
for $1 million.
they're cheap. What?
The one that sold for $1 million. I don't remember in my head because I didn't realize that there were until later as we saw them. And thank you for this absolutely wonderful.
Then
This
go find the $1 million one
the
here.
$1 million painting. I was wondering if it had a body. In other words, whether. See how these have a light background and you can see the bodies were.
Yep, and this is 1815. Yeah.
And then the period where they had the headless rumors, they were all black, to the best of my knowledge.
I'm not sure. Yeah,
The interesting as you flash this that many of them have bodies. Most of them seem to have bodies. But during that period, they didn't. But I can see how it would
girl in
be.
the red dress, and then you got the girl in the red dress with the cat and dog,
Yeah, they're
and
definitely distinguishable in every way.
and again, she's sitting on the green stool with the green tassels hanging down. So
He may not even be sitting on it. He just may use that as his painterly prop.
right. So yeah, I don't know.
Because she doesn't really look very well propped on it. I mean, the dress looks like almost like she's standing up.
Almost. Yeah.
Very interesting paintings. Thank you so much.
Interesting also that you frequently see these red dresses with the very, very broad shouldered dresses, the horizontal.
Right. You got this one, and I think the one.
That one?
Actually, this is probably red, but when I took a photo of it, it turned out less red. But yeah, same things. And I think there's lots of. If you look out on the internet, there's lots of things with girls in the red dresses.
Yeah. Well, and the one that you used as your opening slide, the girl has this kind of shoulders in red dress. So it's, maybe it's just what he did for his stock design for girls, little girls, and which is interesting.
Let me see now. There's the one for the. There's the other one in the red dress.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, but that's a boy in a red dress. Yeah, this one here, this was the,
again,
this is Maya and daughter. I don't know what year this is.
No, it's about the same. I'd say that around 1830-ish.
But now that I look at it closely, it looks like the mother is kind of heavy set. Now that I'm looking at it.
but her face is not heavy set, so.
Yeah, so,
He's using someone else's body.
Yeah, somebody else's body.
Her hands aren't plump either.
Yeah.
mhm.
She has the long finger. That's one of the distinguishing things about our Theodore Schultz portrait is really elongated fingers and very elongated feet.
Yeah.
You know, but it's interesting. It's interesting. Well, are there any other questions from anybody? Oh, I think I see Elliot trying to get our
Yeah.
attention.
This is maybe a little esoteric, but of curiosity. I noticed that when you were showing the husband-wife portraits, they were designed so that the man would hang on the right and the wife would hang on the left, and they would be looking toward each other. Not all of them, but most of them. Was that typical in terms of left and right? And the reason I ask is because in cemeteries, it's the opposite. Traditionally, the man is buried on the left and the woman is buried on the right. And so I wonder if there was some kind of a standard here, or if it was just the way it worked out, or was it a pattern?
I think most of them that I had said was the woman was looking to the right and the men would look to the left. The Van Wyck Homestead, the two husband and wives, the men are looking to their left and the women are looking to their right. And I think
Okay.
that's more or less the standard, but there
Okay.
were some,
Right.
like that Joseph, the guy in a bright blue, he's looking to his right and his wife in a green dress is looking to her left. So it may have just depended on the people for some reason
That's
or
interesting.
whatever, but I think the majority of the man was looking to his left, especially for husband and wives. Otherwise, it probably, a single person didn't matter that much.
Right.
But for husband and wives, you want to put the paintings on the wall, framed paintings on the wall, and you want them looking at each other. All
So
right?
the man would be hanging on the left and the woman would be hanging on the right.
Yeah, looking at each other.
Right,
Mm.
so that would be
I think in the
consistent
majority of cases,
with the way most burials were handled in that same way.
I
With the man
guess,
on the
whatever.
left. Right, okay.
What did I say? Looking at each other. Sorry, my thought just went out.
That's all right. It'll come back someday.
Uh-huh.
He's really good at those lace bonnets, isn't he?
Oh, I know what I wanted to say. I read somewhere that he learned to put the heads at about the same. I mean, even though the wife might have been 8 inches shorter, he put the painting so that she would be maybe 3 inches short. You know, right? So the heads were sort of on the same plane, looking at each other, even though maybe the wife was 6 or 8 inches shorter than him. He found that, and I read this somewhere, he found that was better appearance-wise than maybe having her obviously appearing to be 6 inches shorter than the
Yeah.
husband. So he kind of
Sure.
put the heads on the same plane. And like I said, the head was the main thing when he was doing the paintings.
Elliot, I've been doing ancestry recently for my whole family, and you know what? I never noticed, but what you just said, that they're all the husbands are on the left and the wives are on the right.
Most of the time.
Yeah, most of the time. I
Yeah.
haven't come across one that isn't. That's really interesting. I don't know what it means, but it's interesting.
I don't either. When I first started working with the cemeteries here in the town, I noticed that there was left and right, and I asked the person who I was sort of my mentor, or whatever you want to call it, if that was standard or if it was just, owner's preference or buyer's preference, and whoever it was said, no, that was pretty standard, that the man would be on the left. Did not know why.
Maybe the men usually pass faster. And they got the first one up on the left. I don't know.
That could be.
I just want to say here that this says Mrs. Mayer and daughter. A lot of them said, the one said Mrs. Stephen Ostrander. Another one said Mrs. William Northrup. they don't show the woman's real name in most cases. It's Mrs. Stephen Ostrander, all right? Mrs. James Dunn. And it reminds me that going through some archives for the Fishkill Historical Society, there was a picture of several women in, I'll say it was the 1980s, 1970s, 1980s, outside the Wyck Homestead Museum. And it was a newspaper article, and underneath the picture of the woman, it said Mrs. James Dunn, Mrs. Thomas Smith, Mrs. Joseph such and such, Mrs. Frank. It didn't have the woman's first name. It was like they were possessions. And I laughed at it. It's like, you got to be kidding me. And this is how it was in the 1960s, 1970s. So back in the 1800s, it continues. But anyway, hopefully nowadays, when there's a woman in the picture, it says Ellen Du Bois, or, you know, has her first name.
Yep.
They also don't have the last name necessarily of their husband.
Yeah. Well, I remember growing up, that's how women were supposed to properly sign a letter. You know, you might say, you know, Mrs. Frank Cook, and you were allowed maybe to put your own name, Doris, in parentheses in the middle of the signature. But anyway,
Seriously? Wow.
yeah, that was conventional for well-bred women. That was, you know, that was the way it was done. So, are there any other questions? I'm thinking maybe. I don't know.
Well, anyway, I recommend look up Ammi Phillips on the internet and search
Right.
around, and
Yeah, I
maybe
think
search for the backs of the photos, see if you can see what a strainer is, or
You've
just
opened
put that
a
in,
whole new-
strainer.
you've opened a
portrait
whole new
strainer,
world for
portrait
us.
Stretcher. See what
Any
comes up.
mention of teeth?
But
Women not smiling because of teeth?
no, what I read was that it was difficult because you're sitting for like an hour, then you might have a 15-minute break, and then you're sitting again for another hour, and you have a 15-minute break. It would be hard to have an actual smile where you're showing your teeth. All right, now to me, you should be able to smile with a little bit of a grin on your lips, but I don't see that. They all look very serious, and
Well,
some
even
look
more-
actually angry.
Yeah, well,
Did you-
Mrs. Guernsey looks, I think her problem was either she was angry or her teeth weren't that good.
Whatever, but anyway,
Yes.
so it'd be difficult, as I read in the thing, and I might have said it in one of the slides, text slides here. It's difficult to smile and hold the smile for a half an hour or longer. So that's why you just have closed mouths.
There is one jolly looking lady in your slideshow. I noticed her, sort of a chubby lady, but that's about it. Elliot just reminded me that we also should be thanking Craig Marshall, who helped Elliot make the connection to you, Mr. Lynch, because Craig, our vice president, knows everybody in every historical society in the county, and he knew about this, and that was the connection. So between Glenda and Craig and Elliot, and now Bob, who did the work with you on setting this up, and Kathy, who helped get everything publicized and get the technology going. We've had a lovely evening, and I thank you all for being part of it. And I think we've learned a lot.
Our Wyck Homestead Museum is open weekends, June through October, Saturday and Sunday afternoons. So if you want to see the 5 Ammi Phillips paintings that we have, stop by some afternoon for a tour. All right.
Great. Want to make a point of doing that. Thank you so much.
All righty.
Any final words from anybody? Well, do I see another thing in the chat? Or is that? No?
Thanks for a great presentation from Greg Edmonds.
Great, Greg
Okay.
Edmonds, out in Ohio. Nice to have you with us, Greg. Okay, well, thank you, Steve. This is great.